Hello and welcome to the Promised Land, a show about Manchester United and part of the 90 Min podcast network. I'm Scott Saunders, joined by Rob Blanchette. As ever, we are a day away from pre-season officially kicking off for Manchester United. They play Leeds in, I believe it's Norway, on Wednesday. 4 p.m. UK kickoff, I've just discovered. So that's a bit of a weird time, not in the evening, but nevertheless. Last season's football season finished, and already we're back into the new one. You excited, Rob?
Excited, is that the word? A little bit, yes. Like in the sense that I'm a kind of person that just likes to get into the football bit. Like we have to do all the other stuff, transfers, gossip, your controversy, all of those things. We do talk about everything. But it's just nice when there's a little bit of football and we actually get to sit down again, both as supporters and as a journalist, as I said to you off camera, and kind of make notes about what you're seeing and kind of going, oh, look, the business of football is starting again. So, yes, I am actually going to say I'm excited and a nice afternoon kickoff time where most people will miss it, but plenty of people around the world will get the chance to watch it.
Yeah, we will see if any new faces. I was going to say new faces, but there's only one so far. Mason Mount, we'll see if he makes his debut.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the Leeds friendly later in the show. But today we'll also talk about some players who could potentially leave the club, Donny van de Beek and Fred, to add to the sad goodbye David De Gea said to the fans on Saturday. Obviously, we recorded a show on Friday saying it was likely that he would go, and obviously he confirmed that then on Saturday is the first show we've done since. We'll also talk Ahmad, Hannibal, and a whole topic section on who should be United's captain next season, because Rob and myself have spoken off camera and we have our own pick, which is the same person. But fair to say, I think Bruno Fernandes will get it if they are going to change captain. But yes, we'll have a wider conversation on that. And yes, we'll talk some other contenders as well. Subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple, Google, Spotify, and the likes, and head over to the channel. Like, subscribe, leave a comment for us on the YouTube, and follow us on social networks. Rob is still on Twitter at _Rob_B, at PromiselandMU for the show. And I'm on all social networks, TikTok.
Literally all social networks
Twitter,
in the universe,
Instagram, etc., etc. __ Scott Saunders. I couldn't even get through that properly. And come and join us in Las Vegas from July 28th at UnitedCon. That is really close now. Really quite close. United's preseason will be in full swing by that point. United play Dortmund in Las Vegas. We'll be there for that. Visit united-con.com to book your place now if you'd like to join us. Plenty of former players and familiar faces in the United fan community that you might know will also be there as well. So let's start. Should we do a quick ode to Dave?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's sad in the circumstances, really, how this has come about. We've obviously spoken about how United didn't really deal with his contract in the right way. But when you take a step back, regardless of the circumstances, it was a necessary decision. And I think the fact that De Gea has now confirmed he's left the club means that United can move forward. Andre Onana still not confirmed yet, but it will be at some point this week. We said it would probably be confirmed or near there by the time we recorded this show. Turns out no, but we'll say that again by Friday. Probably we're looking at Andre Onana succeeding David De Gea officially in the United goal. Sad moment, Rob, really, just because he does he go down as a legend? Let's just say that one. And where does he rank in? United hasn't great goalkeepers in the past, but I'm seeing a lot of Schmeichel, Van der Sar, and obviously the news about Edwin van der Sar over the last few days, really awful, and we wish him the very best in his recovery. Hope it's just a terrible situation. Thoughts go to his family, everyone involved, and obviously best wishes to Edwin on a recovery. But yeah, a word on that, Rob, I guess, first of all.
Yeah, well, look, the Edwin news is shocking and sad. David leaving the football club to me isn't particularly sad. It's part of the business of football. But, as you said there, hope that obviously Edwin makes a full recovery. When these things happen suddenly with health, they are shocking moments for everyone. And all you can do is kind of keep your fingers crossed and hope that he can get back on his feet soon And of course, all of us wish him the very best. And we're all fighting in his corner, and hopefully he'll be back soon.
Yeah, Van der Sar obviously is a United legend along with Peter Schmeichel.
Yeah.
How does David De Gea fit into that mix? Because he won Player of the Year 4 times, right?
Yeah, look, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I did a tweet. This always seems to start like that, didn't it? I did a tweet. I put out there, really. I've said this before, so it's not new news, and it's not it's not a contrary opinion just because I'm trying to be funny on Twitter or something. But I said, I saw Schmeichel all the way through. I'm going to tell a little Schmeichel story actually in a second as well. And Schmeichel was brilliant. We know how great he was. He was a fantastic goalkeeper for Manchester United. For me, and this is just as a match-going fan, supporter, journalist, human being, whatever you want to call it, yeah? For me, the best goalkeeper I've ever seen play for Manchester United is David De Gea. That's the truth. Now, that's not me saying with a caveat David's rubbish with his feet, because we know he is rubbish with his feet. But I think over a longevity period, Scott, and like you said there, what is a legend? Well, yeah, for most clubs, or a legend isn't someone that wins trophies. A legend is about service. Manchester United, we're spoiled. Even today, we're still spoiled because we talk about everything in terms of silverware. We don't talk about longevity generally. But to play at Manchester United for over a decade, it's kind of almost impossible, isn't it, at a club like United? It's so rare. You get the Rooneys of the world, and the Carricks or whatever, people who have that longevity. But it's rare for someone to stay at one club that long, isn't it? Especially a foreign import. So I think when I look at David De Gea and look at his body of work, to me, he is a legend and he is the best goalkeeper we had. And the reason why I say that is because he played almost exclusively at Manchester United through a period where we were trash. And that was the word I used. You said it to me, Scott, a few weeks ago, and you said it on camera, actually. Or the period you've covered Manchester United as a journalist and me as a journalist, yeah, Man United have been pretty bad. Our work and our lives have been talking about how bad this team is.
Well, yeah, I'll say that again. I started working in football media in David Moyes' first season as Man United manager. That was when I started.
Lucky you is what I'll say to that. But yeah, I started writing slightly before that. And I think, during that period, we've had to talk about a lot of bad things, haven't we? One person that saved Man United year after year after year after year after year after year, we're Man United and we were talking about can we get top 4 and ended up 5th, 6th, wherever. David De Gea kept United afloat for years. I was at games where you'd had 30 shots at you and he'd just save them all and you'd be like, oh God, without De Gea today, I don't know what happens here. Now, I know that gets easily forgotten. We move on and we have different aspirations now. Onana's going to bring a different kind of profile to the goalkeeping spot. And we do need it, no doubt about it. But people forget very easily, Scott. They forget so easily. Peter Schmeichel was brilliant, but he had a rick in him. And he had a mistake in him and he made mistakes regularly, all the time, kicking errors, handling errors, all sorts. But we forget because he's the treble winner and he won loads and he was a legend, rightfully a legend, but he was not perfect. I was going to a story about Peter Schmeichel. I'm going to just add in there. I remember the first day I ever saw him at Old Trafford. There was a guy walking through the crowd. And I was walking through the crowd too, going towards the Stratford end. And this guy was walking through and he had big blonde hair. He was really tall, didn't know who he was. And he walked up to me up close. I looked down and he had red feeler trainers on. And all I remember was thinking, oh, I love those trainers. I want those trainers. And as he walked past me, someone said to me, oh, that's our new goalkeeper. We signed him last week. And I was like, really? And we saw him that day. I think it was Notts County. And he made 2 or 3 mistakes that day on his debut. But Schmeichel had a better connection with the fans in a way because he's got that gregarious personality, whereas I think De Gea is a little bit more demure, isn't he? And, didn't really have maybe that outward projection with a lot of the fans. But for me, and just for me, I don't know what you'll say, Scott, I might say something different. David De Gea is the best goalkeeper I've ever seen at Man United. He edges out Schmeichel, he edges out Van der Sar, and someone even said to me the other day, Gary Bailey. And I was like, oh, come on. I mean, when Gary Bailey was a goalkeeper, everyone would be nuts about him and be like, it just made error after error all the time. But he was really popular as a goalkeeper. So, yeah, he leaves for me as a legend. And there's no doubt, Scott, if he came back next year, if he walked out at Old Trafford, he would get the biggest.
He'd have a testimonial.
reception.
I think.
Exactly.
Honestly.
And he deserves it. Player of the year, how many times? Yeah. Sorry, Scott.
just like preseason set already, but like I think as much as like I think Bruno Fernandes put on his Instagram, it shouldn't have ended like this. You should have said goodbye to the fans in the stadium. It doesn't work out like that most times. Obviously, there's not many United players who've had that privilege of being able to say goodbye to the fans.
No,
and announce it ahead of time. But I think De Gea always been a favorite with the match-going fans. And yeah, it's a shame in the circumstances, but it is business. And I think just an additional comment there, Rob, I think we should make a separate podcast series all about Peter Schmeichel's red feeler trainers.
I'm up for that.
Yeah.
I didn't know who he was. I was only a kid, you see. I walking through there, and this guy was massive, and walking towards us, and I was like, "Oh, those trainers!" And he was in a kind of like suit, but not a suit, like with a t-shirt, and it just looked wrong. Like he was turning up at Old Trafford for his first day at work, and I was walking around the Stretford end, and yeah, look, I think Schmeichel became a legend. Like no one knew who he was, and then he had that run with Denmark, and obviously was great for us for so many years. There are still a lot of Man United fans, Scott, who have not forgiven him for playing for Man City. A lot.
Yeah,
I know a lot. Still, that is the caveat they always use. They go, "Oh yeah, the treble winning season was great. Yeah, I loved that team. I don't love Schmeichel anymore because I saw him walk out of Old Trafford in blue." And I get that. That was a really hard thing for a lot of people at the time. I think the current fan forgets that because it was longer than 5 minutes ago. So it's like that didn't happen, but it did happen. It was a big deal at the time. And this was a legend of our football club playing for the team one of the two teams we hate the most. So that does live on, unfortunately, for Peter Schmeichel. And I don't know, I think Schmeichel might regret that now.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, just my 2 cents there. Peter Schmeichel was in goal when I was growing up. And he was the one that really captured my imagination as a kid. You remember that game at Newcastle? When United were chasing Newcastle down, Cantona scored in I think it was the second half. But I remember speaking to my parents, like me being I couldn't have been that old at the time, like 7, 8, I would say. And I was watching the match, and like Cantona scored the winning goal. And I was like, I love Cantona, And I was like, Sky used to do this, call in for your man of the match. And I was like, can we call in? I want to put Cantona down as the man of the match. And my parents were like, Peter Schmeichel's the man of the match. Peter Schmeichel's been the man of the match. He saved bloody everything. And he was, I think. But I think for me, that is... you're right, though, Rob. I know he made a lot of errors, but he's kind of held up in this regard of he was in goal through United's dominant years. Probably more dominant than even Van der Sar's years. I don't know in terms of how many trophies, but that was when in the 90s when Peter Schmeichel was in goal, that was when United were at their absolute pomp. And you could argue the 08 team are better, but Schmeichel for me was the one that captured my imagination, but it's a very, very valid point you make about him going to play for City. But anyway, yes, David De Gea has said goodbye. We're going off topic a little bit there, but Manchester will always be in my heart. It's shaped me and will never leave me. Nice statement that he made, but it was the right decision in the end. Definitely. And United have to move on.
As a business decision, it was the right decision. Get his wage off the books, but also get his issues off the books and bring in a goalkeeper that can help you with stuff that you're not so good at. So I don't think that's an emotional thing, you see. I always look at that as really salient. I'm kind of stoic with those things and say, right, hang on, you need to do this to win football matches. That's the business we're in. But no, thank you to David for his service. Fantastic goalkeeper. People need to get over fax machines now. Stop messaging me and tweeting me saying about fax machines. Like, that was a long time ago. We're looking at the body of work. And I think that he'll come back to United. There's no doubt about it. And will be given the warmest welcome. Like you just said there, Scott, match-going fans like De Gea, because there's so many times we walked out that stadium going, oh my God, we didn't have De Gea today. And that was a common thing for years. So much so that he won Player of the Year like multiple times. So a legend of the football club. And again, just thanking him for his service and good luck to him in the future.
It's one of my aspirations in football media one day to sit David De Gea down and talk about music.
You and him and Metal be like a 6-hour interview.
He's getting so much stick. I mean, Luke Shaw was one of the... Ashley Young, I think, gave him a bit of stick in the comments as well for his music taste, what he put on in the dressing room. But I would like to dig into De Gea's mind and understand what his tastes are. But yes, let's talk about players who could follow David De Gea out the door as well. Fred is, I think this one's got a real possibility of happening.
Yeah.
You know, by the way, let us know your comments on David De Gea in the comment section or on any of the social networks at @Scott Saunders, @_Rob_B, and @PromiseAndMU for the show as well. We did a story on natimin.com yesterday about interested clubs in Donny van de Beek. There's a lot of them, but he's not top of their lists. Let's just say that. And also, I think the way it's looking, it's more likely to be a loan than a permanent transfer as it stands, unless United get pretty... Unless they go down... Well, they might have to sell him for 10 million or less. I don't know. But Fred has a decent chance of fetching a bit of money. Which one do you think is more likely to leave?
Both. I will predict that neither will be playing for Man United on the first day of the season. So why? So where do we stand with both players? I think the thing is that Fred has a market, and the Fred market was created by Fred last year in the last 2 years, and has shown that he can do different things. But I also think that his limitations in the centre of the park do hurt Man United. And we saw it last year, didn't we, Scott? Whereas he kind of dropped out the rotation a little bit, ended up on the bench. And all of this, well, Fred's really good with Casemiro. Well, and that's not what the stats say. The stats say that Fred and Casemiro was a bit of a dead duck, wasn't particularly good at all. And I think the manager saw that and kind of pushed Fred towards the sidelines. When we talk about Donny van de Beek, you're saying there about a loan. I think the situation with Donny van de Beek is that Man United is just going to have to give him away. It's just the truth. It won't be a free transfer, but it will be an undisclosed fee and it will be pennies. And he might get used in a make weight in another transfer. That wouldn't surprise me. I keep saying this. I think Donny has admirers, but for as many admirers that he has, there are plenty of people in the game that look at him and go, well, he's been a massive failure at Man United, not just because of the injury, but just when he's been on the football pitch, Scott, just not good enough. That's why you went and got Mason Mount. So I think both will be going out the door. And that will probably mean that you retain someone like, Scott McTominay, who I think was probably favourite to leave, say the end of last season when Newcastle were knocking on the door for him, and now Newcastle are not knocking on that door. So there'll be plenty of movement. I think in the coming days ahead, we'll be talking a lot about it. But I think both players are kind of surplus to requirement, especially if you go get Mount, and then maybe you go get another number 6.
Well, we know that United wants Sofiane Amrabat as well.
Yes.
We won't talk too much about that today, just because...
Not yet.
As we've said already, I mean, United need to sell players in order to raise funds, in order to reinvest. And I would think Donny van de Beek and Fred are two of the players that you could, or you should be getting out of the door before you get an Amrabat. Or maybe you get Fred out and then that raises enough money to get Amrabat from Fiorentina. 20, 30 million quid, I think you're looking at there. You could get a big chunk of that money back for Fred. So we'll see. Van de Beek has a lot of interest, like I say, from a number of clubs, but he has not played any football. Let's be honest, he's not played any football. He's lost his place in the Dutch national team, and bit of a challenge for him to get his career back on track. Ajax, Feyenoord could potentially take him, but I think United just have to. And we'll talk about Harry Maguire in a little bit as well, because I think he falls into the same bracket here. But there's a lot of players that United need to get out. We did a show last month on all of the players that we think United should be trying to shift on. They haven't done many yet, if any at all. So they got to get to work. What about Ahmad and what about Hannibal? Because they've both been in pre-season training and you've seen video of them. Do you think it means something?
It's quite interesting with Man United socials when they start targeting players, because they have been doing it with those two players quite a lot in the last week or so, kind of bigging them up. Both deserve to be bigged up, I think. It's also another player I think that added into the mix is Kobe Manu. So I think when you look at these youngsters, there's always a limited ceiling, Scott, in the short term. Yeah. Like, what opportunities will they get? Well, they'll be on the tour probably, and they'll get minutes and those things. It doesn't mean they can just jump into starting roles or be on the bench, for the first game of the season. I really like Hannibal. I think there's a lot of upside to his all-round game. I think he's got a lot of energy. He's got a bit of bite. He's a bit nasty. I quite like that. I think with Ahmad, it's about competition, isn't it? And about where you decide that where he's going to play. it's probably better that Ahmed does go out on loan, maybe. That's not the football fan talking in me. Like, I want to see Ahmed play for Man United, but I also want Ahmed to carry on growing and developing with all those things. So when you look at the outgoings, like you just said, they've got to get on with it. I think there's a lot of talk at the moment about Man United's, stagnation in the transfer market. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. Like, it really isn't not happening. There's a lot of stuff happening. It's just that you've got to find the right buyers and the right trajectory, haven't you, for a lot of these players going out the door. But I would like to see Hannibal and Ahmed feature, especially on this pre-season tour. Like, obviously, we will be there in Las Vegas. I'd love to see them start against Dortmund. Like, I'm more interested in seeing them start for Dortmund than I am a Fred or a Van der Beek. Like, I ain't that interested in seeing them. I'd like to see some of the young players. Did we see, obviously, as well, Angel Gomez, successful campaign for England, a player that I used to big up all the time. And then when he left, people went, "You don't know anything about football, Rob, do you?" Well, Angel Gomez is a great player, or could be a great player.
Jimmy Garner as well.
I wouldn't mind seeing Angel come back to United one day. Like, it'd have to be the right opportunity. It'd be like Pogba, wouldn't it? Like, we've signed him for a ridiculous fee and then he does nothing. But pleased for Angel, but also just really shows, I think, the talent that Man United have got within the Man United factory. I think we can exploit that. Garnacho is a perfect example, isn't it? That if you put your faith in youth, you can develop them pretty quickly. So it's a wait and see with those two guys, but United have got a ton of really good youngsters.
That's true. Also, I think that United didn't actually have a contracted player from any of the teams in that tournament, the European Championship under 21 tournament. But, they do have some other players who are pretty talented that should be pushing on the door. Will Ahmad and Hannibal do that in preseason? We will wait and see.
Kobe's the guy.
Yes, that is true. Yes.
Kobe's the guy. Like, he's young. He's got everything. And he is the one that, if you're a United fan who's a bit more casual watching our show just to kind of catch up on bits and bobs, Kobe's the one you should pay attention to. In the same way we said exactly 12 months ago, Scott, pay attention to this guy called Garnacho. And people were like, but why? It was like, you're going to see why. And 12 months on, everyone knows who he is. I get the feeling with Kobe Manu, it'd be the same thing from, I think, 12 months' time, people were saying he's a really, really good footballer. And thankfully, we've got him.
Right. Let's move on to the question of who should be Man United's next captain. Now, reports or suggestions over the last few days that, obviously, I'm sure everyone has seen Harry Maguire in pre-season training in his little camp. He's actually been training with Ricardo Carvalho as well. Did you see that, Rob?
I did, yes, yeah.
Yes, Ricardo Carvalho put in the hours in multiple sessions a day, trying to work really hard to get back in the mix. We did talk on, I think it was last week's show, about how even a player like Harry Maguire could potentially be helped out by a player playing behind him in goal who could actually pass the ball and not give him hospital passes every 5 seconds. So we'll see. But obviously, Maguire, United would like to shift him. Suggestions over the weekend from elsewhere. United are looking for 50 million quid. They're not getting 50 million quid for Harry Maguire. And I think, that might end up being the reason why Harry Maguire ends up staying at the club. He's on near 200k a week. Who is going to pay Harry Maguire 200 grand a week with a big transfer fee like that? Your options are very limited at best, unless he ends up going to Saudi Arabia or something. It's just not going to happen. So, but we do know Harry Maguire is not first choice. It would even not be a stretch to suggest that Harry Maguire is 5th choice centre-back currently, after the two obvious ones, Victor Lindelof and Luke Shaw. So, do United have to change their captain? And can you see it happening? And then we'll get on to the question of who it should be in a second.
Well, firstly, look, if he stays at the club, United are not going to strip him of the captaincy. It's just not going to happen. He will be one of those club captains in the background that does a lot of clapping and cheering and manages the dressing room and chats to people and all of that stuff. But you're paying a lot of money, aren't you, for someone to do that? And that's not productive. Let's put it like this. Manchester United have been looking for a buyer for Harry Maguire. There's no doubt about that. There is no market for Harry Maguire at that price at the moment. And like you said, I do believe that Lindelof and Luke Shaw are ahead of him in the pecking order. Now, does that mean that Harry Maguire won't play games next season if he was still at Man United? Well, no, because if he gets his form back or proves it behind the scenes, this manager will play him. This manager's not going to ostracize him in a way that, say, Jose Mourinho would do with players, is that he will say, well, if you prove it, then I'll go with you. And that's why players like Erik ten Hag. So I think when you look at Harry Maguire, there's been a lot of chat this week about, retaining Maguire is a sign of weakness, shows that Manchester United are not serious, that Manchester United don't, have a grip of what they need to do in their squad. It's rubbish, is what it is. If you can't find the price for the player that you want to move on, then it doesn't make sense just moving them on for 10 pence. But if you're going to move them on because you're bringing in, say, someone like Kim, which was the original situation with Manchester United, where they wanted Kim, they felt that they could move Maguire out quite easily, and all of that collapsed. Kim is now going to Bayern Munich. Harry Maguire is still in your squad, but he's fifth choice, Scott. Fifth. So it's not a massive issue. It's not like he's the starter as of today, is it? So I think Harry Maguire, if he wants to give it a go and we can't shift him, then you're going to have to do that, aren't you? You're going to have to wave the carrot in front of his nose and say, well, prove it. Get your form back from 3 or 4 years ago. Where, do you remember the year we got to the Europa League final and lost to Villarreal? People forget that Harry Maguire was brilliant that season. He was brilliant. And
he got injured and everyone was like, oh, God, no.
He got injured. And I think that's why we didn't win that game. I really do. I think we lost our leader. And that was at that point where I think his stock had risen again. And he was kind of showing why people rated him as a top defender. Now, look, if I could sell Harry Maguire tomorrow, I would. I'd sell him. Yeah. In the same way I used to say, if you can move De Gea out and bring in a new goalkeeper that helps you, I would do that too. But I'm not going to say that the season's a bust if you don't get rid of Harry Maguire, because that's what's being put out here, like by, all sorts of outlets that it shows that Manchester United are weak. No, it does not. It means you have to manage your business correctly. And Harry Maguire, he's not going to be captain on the pitch, is he, Scott? Like, he just isn't. But if he's still at your football club, you have to work with him and find a route out. I think you still might find late buys for him, late bids. People will test the water. But now Man United are not going for Kim. Does it make sense to lose another defender when you've just let Axel Tuanzebe go out the door? I don't know what's going on with Mengi. I don't know if he will be at the club or whether he'll be sold or whether he'll be loaned or whatever. But you've still got to keep some players for certain positions, haven't you? And Harry Maguire's not a bad backup in that sense. Do you know what I mean? He's someone you could call upon. I don't even think he'll make the bench much, Scott, next year. Like, if he's in the squad, I don't see him making a bench to come on. Do you get what I mean? I think Lindelof is ahead of him in that aspect. But we all know that last year 2 primary centre-backs both got injured, didn't they? So it would be crazy to kind of just let all your defensive stock go because you think Luke Shaw's good enough to do that job. Well, what do you do at left back then? So there's always additional problems, isn't there?
Yeah, just to talk about Maguire for a second. I mean, obviously his camp have negotiated the wage that he's on. But it's not uncommon that Man United, as a football club, over the past decade, have inflated players' wages beyond belief.
Yeah.
And it is no coincidence that is one of the primary reasons why they can't sell any players. Like,
totally.
United they've put players on wages which are astronomically higher than any other league in the world, barring PSG, Real Madrid, Barcelona. They're probably the only teams, really, that could, and I'm not saying they're going to sign Harry Maguire, but they're probably the only teams, and they're probably not even nowadays. They're the only teams who can even consider paying a player that much money as their club captain outside of the Premier League. So, and then you look around all the other top 6 clubs in the Premier League plus Newcastle. Maybe Newcastle is a shout for him, but that's not going to happen. Like, none of them are taking him. You want to offload him to West Ham? He'd be the highest earner. This is like, it's not Harry Maguire's fault that United can't shift him. Like, yes, he's not performed to his maximum, and there's an argument for that, but there's also things that you can say about the way that United have set up over the last few years, the fact that they haven't had a tactical identity since before Erik ten Hag has come in. Like, Harry Maguire is not, and everybody knows this, Harry Maguire is not built to play in a high line because he's too slow. And it's no coincidence that when he excelled at Leicester or when he excelled with England, I'll take England as the example, playing the back 3. These are not it's not all his fault, is all I'm going to say, that United can't shift him. United have for years paid players far too much money to sit on the bench or just be a part of the squad. Their wages are inflated beyond belief. And I feel like they need to start addressing that. And with Andre Onana's reported wage, which is like 120K a week, that's fine. Like, that is kind of expected. Like, if Onana flops, for example, and you have to sell him, there's probably a taker in 2-3 years' time who will pay him equivalent money or a little bit less. So United don't have to then pay 10 million quid to pay him off or something like that. It's just frustrating. I mean, Harry Maguire's getting a lot of pelters just for training, and I just don't think it's very fair.
It's not fair, and I think, again, this is why I'd say it's our brand here on the Promised Land, or my brand, or whatever, But I think you need to have a little bit more of a salient thought process around footballers, and also look at it like this, Scott. If he does stay, don't throw so much hate at him against social. Like we've just talked about David De Gea with this. David De Gea's gone out the door, and I'm sure David De Gea will be well paid somewhere else. But it's not nice, is it, that, gives you all that service and then people literally crucify him as he goes out the door? Like, what's the point? So I know that's kind of trying to reroute the kind of the mindset of the common football fan on Twitter, and maybe that's unfair. But I think when you look at someone like Harry Maguire, I think that next year, if he can get his form and fitness back with Onana behind him, he might actually look like a centre-back again. So you might be able to use him. Now, these are all mights, aren't they? This is not definites. But the only thing Harry Maguire is responsible for, Scott, is his training, his fitness, and his form. And if he can get those things right, and footballers do miraculously do that, like when they've had bad years, bad 2, 3, 4 years, suddenly it clicks, something works, to get a new fitness trainer or something changes, or you get a goalkeeper that can pass the ball to you. Would we do that? Might help me as a centre-back. If you get that, then you get injuries, Maguire might step in and do the job. So I think the United fans need to, again, just get off this train of hype and hatred and just constantly like, I want what I want. That makes, because I love United and I want this, that, and the other. Well, Harry Maguire, if there is a buyer there, Man United will sell. It's just that there isn't a buyer at the moment. It might be the case, Scott, that they should have gone and got Kim for that price, mid-40s, whatever the release ended up being, and let Maguire go for 20, and you'd have got him. You'd have sold him like that. Man United don't want to do that because no one wants that wage. No one wants to take that wage off Man United. So you can't do that. There's no point crying about it, is there? You're stuck with him for a little bit longer. Better to work with him and maybe try and make him a little bit better rather than just kill him. And then when he has to play for you, he might not actually be motivated to play for you as fans, because all you do is tweet him or Instagram him and tell him how awful he is. So, support your own is what I'm trying to say. Do you know what I mean? At the same time, but I get why people doubt him as a footballer. We've done that show a million times.
But it's not his fault that United can't sell him currently.
No.
United put him on that contract. United paid that money for him.
He didn't say pay 80 million for me, did he? Make me the world record transfer for a centre-back. He didn't say that, did he? Leicester said that. And Man United, after a year of haggling, did it. But a year before that, we're like, oh, no, we're not paying 80. We'll give you 50. We'll give you 60. We'll give you 63. What about 65? And it went on for like ever. And then you got Maguire, didn't you? Jose Mourinho famously wanted Harry Maguire and was like banging on the Man United board door saying, get me Harry Maguire, because he was high at the top of his stock. But you're right. I also think system-wise, Scott, you talked about it there, the three at the back. Man United never really experimented with that enough. And I think if we'd done that maybe a year or two ago, I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer maybe had something else in his playbook. That could have worked for Harry Maguire massively. I don't know why we didn't do it. I think it might have worked 3-5-2 or something like that. So, yeah, Maguire's going to have to fight his way into the team if he wants to stay. I'm sure that he would take an opportunity to leave as long as he's, recompensed, as long as he gets his wage and can do that and can play in a team. You said they're like West Ham. Like, if he goes to West Ham, he would be their highest paid player. I don't know if West Ham fancy that. I don't think West Ham want that to be their benchmark when they're talking to all their targets.
Taking this player who's on the decline, saying, hey, we're going to make you our highest paid player. It doesn't make any sense for West Ham to do it.
Or any team. Like, doesn't make any... It's like Donny van de Beek. Like, people say, oh, what's his value? No, his true value is 0 because he's done nothing. There's no market for him. Someone's going to take him off your hands, not because they think he's the best midfielder in the world. It's a little bit like Harry Maguire, though, isn't it? Like, he still gets in the England squad. So there is value there. People are going to say, well, he's worth it. But, where does he end up, Scott? Like, I could see him really dropping through the kind of rungs and maybe ending up in a mid-table team, because that's probably the right level, maybe as he goes on the decline. However, he might prove to us this year, Scott, that he's still an international class defender. He might do that, might get a chance, and we might go, him and Onana popping the ball around, it works, and we didn't see it coming. It's happened so often in football.
Well, anyway, we presume, as it stands, fully fit squad, Harry Maguire will not start, right? So we've established that already. Yes. And by the way, I'm not saying that Harry Maguire is the greatest defender ever, that he should stay. We're just explaining why he's not left yet. And he might leave towards the end of the summer if United can get their ducks in order. But the way that United have managed their squad over the last 10 years, and they're starting to realize that you probably shouldn't do that now because all they're talking about is financial fair play. If you'd have given Harry Maguire $100,000 a week less and paid half the transfer fee, you probably could shift him a lot easier than the current situation. This is just the way it is. But it's on United to sort that out. That's going to take years to fix. It's a relatively encouraging start for me. The fact that, Onana and Mount have come in and not massive wages, in line with the squad. They're shifting high earners. David De Gea's gone. Ronaldo's gone. All this kind of stuff. They're actually prioritizing players who are playing well. If you're not offering enough to the team, we'll get rid of you. And they have to take some hits. Arsenal did it. Look where Arsenal are, But let's talk about who is going to hold the captain's armband or wear the captain's armband in Maguire's absence. Do you think it will be Bruno Fernandes?
Well, the short answer is yes. Of course it will be Bruno. I think Bruno, we saw last season, even though he didn't really feature in the 10 as much as I would have liked to have seen him play, he was still on the pitch, wasn't he? Always on the pitch, left side, playing deeper, playing the 8, he played left as well sometimes. Haven't seen him as a false 9, so I'd like to see that this year maybe at some point. But he is the captain, isn't he? He's the guy who's going to wear the armband. But we both have, Scott, don't we, a different personal choice. Just personal choices. Like, we're not trying to upset people. But who would yours be, Scott? Are you going to say it? Shall I say it?
Well,
I think if you read Twitter, you know.
I'll say it, but you can explain it because I think we're on the same page. But I really like Lisandro Martinez. I think he would have a strong shout if he was 2 years in. But I think he's just a little bit too new for me. Bruno Fernandes has got that seniority in the dressing room in terms of being there for a longer period of time. And he's been here for 3.5 years now, I'd say. Leacher only 1 year, but he has all the tools to be one of the leaders in the dressing room. And there's obviously others around the pitch as well. But Lisandro Martinez would be my ideal pick. But, well, give some more context, Rob, if you want.
Well, he would be my pick too. And the context for me is this, is that what you see, especially on the continent, not so much in the Premier League and in England, but it is on the continent, is that basically your most senior player, your oldest player is the captain. You go to Italy, that's how they choose it. They just say, you're 36, you're in the team, you wear the armband, that's it. There's no kind of debate about whether a 28-year-old, a 24-year-old or 21-year-old wears the armband. It's just seniority. But in this country, there's no doubt that the captain is a figurehead, I think, for the team. So, we talked here about the past. I always remember the first captain is Brian Robson, of course. And Brian Robson was God. That's what Brian Robson was on a football pitch, with that armband on and that shoulder popping out of place as he fell over and would be constantly injured. But Brian Robson did everything, scored goals, set up goals, defended, threw his body in front of trains, all sorts for Man United, just did what he had to do. He was a leader of men, the greatest captain Man United have ever had, bar none. You look at someone like Martinez, for me, he embodies the modern Manchester United. He embodies what Erik ten Hag wants from his team and wants from his players. No offense to Bruno. People always go, you hate Bruno, Rob, you hate Bruno, and this is why you do anti-Bruno content. I don't hate Bruno. I think Bruno's great. And I think Bruno as a 10 is brilliant, and I want to see him playing up there more this year. Does Bruno often embody Man United? Is he a little bit whiny, a bit whingy, a little bit falling over, a little bit shouting and screaming and crying and boo-hoo-hoo? Yeah, he is sometimes, isn't he? That's part of his personality. That doesn't mean he shouldn't be the captain, but I would like the captain to be someone that is the guy that puts that first tackle in. The one that goes, yeah, I'm only 5'9", but come on, bring it. And I'm going to deal with you because that's my job. I would rather have someone like that as captain than say Rolls Royce, like say Varane or someone like that. But I want someone who's going to put their body on the line for the team and always lead like that. So that would be my choice. That would be your choice. Scott, why would you want Licha Martinez to be the captain of Manchester United?
He's just hard, isn't he? You know,
just hard, isn't
that
he?
was the most Welsh thing I could have possibly said. But like, he's just, you know, I think that first tackle thing. I just think, remember that day United beat Liverpool and he just gave Mo Salah like some kind of big tackle and then shoulder barge, and Salah was like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah,
but United lack that kind of fight. They've lacked that for a while, and I feel like we're starting to get it back. But Lisandro Martinez, I think you're right, Rob, epitomizes what Ten Hag wants in a United team: intensity, you know, fight, quality on the ball, intelligence, and all of these kind of things. He speaks English quite well as well now. I didn't even realize, but there's been some clips of him and Mason Mount making friends after their fight on the pitch at Old Trafford last season, saying that we're friends now, we're on the same team. He can communicate quite well, I would imagine, but maybe one for the longer term. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. And I think that, you know, again, when you go look back on obviously famous captains, you know, look at Roy Keane. You know, Roy Keane actually wasn't a great verbal communicator. Like Roy Keane shouting at people isn't verbal communication. That's shouting at people. It's not the same thing. So I think the great thing about Roy was that Roy was a dog of war. He's physical. Roy was like, well, I can play football, but if you want to be like this, then I'm going to be like this, and I'm gonna do you. You know, that's just the way it is. I'm the captain of this team. I will lead. Brian Robson was very similar. Robson's not remembered like that, but Brian Robson was the guy that, you know, there was I always remember a friendly years ago, right? It was like a rest of the world versus a Premier League thing. It was Brian Robson was the captain and Diego Maradona was the captain of the rest of the world team, and it was just a friendly. And Diego Maradona had the ball and was dribbling like that, and Brian Robson went bang and smashed him, and people were like, and Robbo picked him up and went, there you go, mate, I'm here now. Maradona didn't touch the ball for the rest of the game. So like that's, you know, I think someone like Martinez, I think again in the Premier League, there's so much doubts about him last year, wasn't there? Especially from the likes to say, I'm going to name and shame Jamie Carragher. Oh, he's too small. At the end of the season, no, he's not too small. He's pretty good. So I think he's earned that right. And as you said, maybe a year or two on, he might have got the captaincy. But yeah, I'd love to see him with the armband, leading Man United out and having that kind of chest puffed out, because he's what you want at Man United. That's the profile of player who's going to come and put their neck on the blocks for you each and every week. Play badly, okay, but give everything. And I think that's what we need. I think that's what Harry Maguire hasn't had, isn't it? Harry's a little bit more demure and quiet and a little bit pointy and a bit like, lads. Well, no, that doesn't really make anyone happy, does it? Really, it doesn't look like leadership, I think. But it's going to be Bruno, and I've got no problem with that. Bruno's going to be the captain, and he's going to play. And let's hope we see Bruno higher up the pitch now, because Mason Mount's in the team.
Casemiro, another contender as well, but obviously, you know, I don't think he necessarily needs to have the armband to be considered a captain. But let's move on. Final section of the show. United play Leeds on Wednesday, and what do you want to see, Rob? What do you? I'll just put that question to you. What do you want to see?
Well, Premier League Manchester United playing Championship Leeds United, so I quite like that as a start off. You know, I'm old school. Leeds mean a lot to me in that context. I don't like Leeds United, just like I don't like some of those other teams. But what do I want to see? It's the start, isn't it? Again, of a new journey. Like I always feel like this every season, that even when you get to the end of a campaign, if it's been good or bad, generally, like we're knackered. Like at the end of the season, you kind of go, last game of the season, at Old Trafford. And it's like, it's been another long one. I'm tired. And you get a few weeks and enough never stops because the transfer window's open and you're into the first game of pre-season. And it's a bit of rejuvenation. So that's what I want to see. I'd like to see new things. I'd like to see Mason Mount play, like even just some minutes. But I want to see which kids look like they might be able to step up and help United this year. All those guys who've been in pre-season a little bit earlier, you know, they deserve minutes, so they'll be out there. I'm not that interested in seeing Marcus Rashford play. I'm not that interested in seeing, like you said, Harry Maguire, though he might well play at some point, no doubt in pre-season. But I just want to see what Ten Hag wants to do this year, because I think that the 4-1-5 we saw last season will get replicated. But I do also think we'll see more bona fide 4-3-3, more bona fide 4-3-3, and that will be the Mason Mount factor, because I think he will play the 8, and I think he'll play with 2 8s. Quite often it will be Bruno in him. Sometimes I think it'll be Eriksen in him. Might even be Scott McTominay and him at some point, just depending on chemistry. But that's what I want to see. I want to see the first game of the season. I want to write down a note, say, right, what did we see? Anything tactically that was different from 12 months ago?
Echo that, Rob. Obviously, I like the way that you opened that up. Premier League versus Championship Leeds United. I do quite like watching those games in the Premier League, just because, it is nice to smash Leeds. But,
look, you want to play your rivals, but when your rivals don't do so well, it's kind of nice as well, isn't it? When they get relegated, you kind of go, you don't feel sad for them, do you? It's not like, oh, we won't pay you next year. That's really sad, isn't it? Well, no. You got to fight now to get yourself back up into the Premier League. Leeds were rightfully relegated, weren't they? Doesn't mean they can't beat us in a pre-season friendly. Like, that's happened before in the past. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of that this year. I think with Man United, the expectations are going to be there to beat teams again, isn't it? Whereas I would say 12 months, 24 months ago, there was less expectations to win football matches. I think that's returned.
United play Leeds on Wednesday, and first pre-season friendly. Then they have a tour of the US coming up. They got tons of friendlies, actually. A fair few. Getting started early, getting pre-season habits right down early on from July the 12th, which is pretty mad. But on July 28th, we'll be at UnitedCon in Las Vegas. So visit united-con.com to book your place now. Plenty of familiar faces to be joining us out there. United play Dortmund out in Vegas. So yes, united-con.com to book your place. Any final thoughts before we sign off, Rob?
No, I think it's going to get a little bit busier now. I do think outgoings will be the next thing at Manchester United. I know it's always a gripe for a lot of United fans about the pace of these things, but it is all going on behind the scenes. And as I said on the show, I do think that Fred and Donny are surplus to requirements. They might be the first 2 out the door. It'd be just interesting where Fred ends up, because I think there's a few teams knocking on the door for him. So again, it would be good luck to him wherever he goes. I think he served United well. But there's going to be maybe a few, and I think Maguire there is still an opportunity maybe towards the end of the transfer window where if the right offer comes in, United might accept it.
Yes, indeed. We will be back later this week to talk more about Man United's pre-season, any potential transfers that might happen since or in this time till we next record. Andre Onana potentially going to be a United player, because all they have really at the moment is Tom Heaton, who could himself leave. Dean Henderson expected to leave once Onana signs as well. Maybe he'll be the first. Maybe he'll be the first out the door. We haven't talked about him today. But yes, United need to shift a lot of players if they're going to reinvest in the squad. But we'll see how it goes. Subscribe to our show wherever you get your pods, and watch us on YouTube. So head over to the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment for us as well on anything we've discussed today. Follow us on social networks like Twitter @_Rob_B, @PromiseAndMU for the show, and @_Scott Saunders for me on all of the social platforms, including Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, etc. And obviously, just mentioned there, UnitedCon July 28th. Visit united-con.com to book your place now. Rob, thank you very much for another Promised Land podcast. We'll be back, everyone, later this week. Until then, have a great week, everyone. See you next time.